I made a rookie mistake. Here's the story. I was on Facebook Marketplace, came across a piece from a local reseller. I've bought from her before, one of my favorite pieces. I actually kept it for myself. She had a dresser pop up and it looked exactly like a Drexel Accolade. I've already refinished that style twice, so I knew what it looked like. It was $180. One of the pulls was messed up, but I thought, I know I could get that. So, okay, great. Go get it. Bring it home. There's no maker's mark anywhere. So I go back to the listing and she didn't say Drexel. She said Drexel style dresser. Rookie mistake. You always look for a maker's mark. That's how you make the highest profit margin. My next mistake is the hardware. So because it's not a standard Drexel Accolade, the hardware is different. The hardware holes from hole to hole on a Drexel Accolade are 3.5. This one is 4.5. Couldn't find it anywhere. I searched everywhere. I took a screenshot, I put it into Google Lens, I looked up Etsy, eBay, Google, everything. Couldn't find it anywhere. Reached out to a local friend whose husband, he kind of recreates hardware as a hobby sometimes, thought, could he do it? She said, I don't think you can do that one. So last ditch effort. There's a Facebook group I'm a part of that's called Hardware Exchange. I posted on there pictures, explained the situation, what I was looking for. And my friend, Charlene from Olive Street Designs, she commented and said, actually, I had one of these last year and I found it on eBay. And I was like, oh, I've already been on eBay, but I'm gonna look again. So I changed my search term. I was looking up like Drexel Accolade hardware, recessed hardware pull. So I just put in campaign hardware. And lo and behold, on the second or third page, there it was. So after tax and shipping, it costs $70 for one pull, but it's on its way. So I'm already in $180 for the dresser and $70 for the pull. So I'm up to $250 before I even start and anything. And I have a little bit of problem on the top. Let me show you.
Here's the piece. It is a beautiful campaign dresser. You can see on the top there was like some wax substance, and I think because of that it caused some damage there. You can see the veneer is a little loose right there. I had some other areas that had some wax build up. I had some veneer damage along one of the bottoms. You can see this grain is kind of crazy. It's very varied. Had a little bit of veneer damage there on one of the drawers, but overall it was in pretty good shape. Just the top mainly had some areas that I'm going to have to fill in. You can kind of see in the light here where there is a little bit of swelling on, probably from either moisture or the wax. So I know underneath the veneer there's probably just either particle board. So I want to go really careful because I've had a Drexel before that had veneer damage just like this, and there was nothing but particle board underneath it. So I want to proceed very cautiously with this. I'm going to start by using my electric screwdriver to remove all of the hardware. I like to replace the screws just so that I can make sure I keep everything together so it goes back together very easily. I'm just going to put it in a little container and then I'll get those polished up later. I'm going to use my 5-in-1 tool, gently pry it behind it, pull it out, and you'll see there's like two little prongs that are just holding it in. I'm going to use my carbide scraper to remove the finish on the top. You can make really quick work of this with the carbide scraper and make sure that your scraper is very sharp because you don't want to gouge the wood. If I have any finish left, I like to start with 80 grit to get any of the remaining finish off. The veneer on the edges tends to be a little fragile, so I like to use my hand sanding blocks just to kind of get off the remaining of the finish, so I just make sure I'm not burning through any of that veneer.
because I had some damage on the veneer on top, I decided to use my carbide scraper to remove the finish because I didn't want to introduce any more liquid to the top because I'm already going to have to put in some wood glue, clamp things down, but it kind of helps me be able to sand things smooth because I had some damage. It was like wax, I think is what they left on top of it. And so it worked really good. Carbide scrapers can be great. You've got to, sharpen them. I try to sharpen mine every time I use it, I sharpen it. And I think I actually need a new blade because it was a little bit rougher. I don't know if this was a thick finish, but usually it works a little bit easier. But I got it and I've got it sanded to 80 grit. All the finish is off. Then I'll just have to sand at 120 and 180. And honestly, I hand sand a lot of times my higher grits because it's just so fast. And so I don't have to deal with any sanding swirls or anything like that. So, and then I'm going to chemically strip the sides in the drawers. So I will do that tomorrow, but top's looking good.
I'm going to add some wood glue to the areas that I had some damage. So any area that I had some veneer lifting, I'm going to work my putty knife underneath there, get a toothpick, and just really get the glue underneath there. And then I'll clamp it up and get it all tight. This area had a split in the veneer, so I'm going to use my putty knife, open that area up a little bit, insert some wood glue, push it back down, and clamp it up. Once those repairs dried, I pulled everything off and I was ready to sand it down. Now I'm ready to strip the drawers and the sides and the frame. I like to put a little piece of painter's tape on the underside of the hardware hole so that the paint stripper doesn't leak into the drawer. I'm using Smart Strip Pro. It's a wonderful non-toxic stripper. I've used a few lately and this is a newer one to me. I'm applying it with a chip brush. You just simply brush it on and then you're going to let it set for about an hour or so. Check it, see if it's ready, and then you can just simply remove it. I'm using my carbide scraper to remove it. Now, again, you do need to be careful with this. I'm using it more as a putty knife. I'm barely applying any pressure, but I'm using it to get off as much finish as I can. Because the thing is the more finish I can get off, the more time I save myself later when I'm sanding. So for the first pass, I'm using the carbide scraper. I get off as much as I can. Then I'll use some acetone with some paper towels. I'll get the residue off. Then I'll come back with some 00 steel wool and some more acetone to get as much of that finish off as possible. And I'll continue the exact same process on the sides, and then I'll move on to the frame. If I have detailed areas like this, I like to come back with a really fine wire brush, usually a brass brush or a nylon brush, something that doesn't damage the wood. It helps me to get the finish off in those fine areas. So here it is, fully stripped. To clean the hardware, I boil some water, I add some vinegar, and I let the hardware soak. Once it's dried out, I'm ready to go through the sanding process. So again, I start with an 80 grit on any areas that I might have some remaining finish. And then after that, I'll move up to 120 and I'll finish off at 180. Because these areas are flat, sometimes I just find it easier to hand sand. So I don't have any problems with sanding swirls. It just is really fast. Because honestly, the 80 grit is going to take the longest because I'm getting the finish off. And then after that, it goes really fast. After I have everything sanded down, then I like to clean it off with a 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water. That just makes sure I get any extra contaminants off. And I'm also checking to make sure I have no irregularities. So anytime you put liquid on, it kind of shows any irregularities. So I like to do that as my final step. And then if I have to come back, I'll do a little bit more sanding. For any kind of curved areas, I have these contour pads that I wrap my sandpaper around. It helps me to get into different profile. If I have a very small area, I just simply wrap it around my Bondo spreader, and it works great. I'm using some wood filler just to fill in those areas where I had some damage. So I glued them up. I'm going to fill it in with some wood filler just to make it nice and smooth. And then once that's dry, I'll come back and sand it smooth. I had a few areas on the top that had some damage, so I'm just going to fill those in. I started with my Blend-All sticks, but I wasn't getting the right color match, so I switched over to a veneer repair kit that uses more of like an acrylic paint, and I was able to blend them a little bit better. You can see I have a lot more variety of colors, so I'm just going to mix up the colors. I'm going to start light, and then I'm going to go a little bit darker, and I'm just trying to mimic the wood tone and the wood variations. I like to use this little fan brush at the very end just to make sure everything is blended in. I'll apply my stain, and then if I have to come back and do any touch-ups, I can.
Since I can't find a maker's mark on this, I really think I should lean into the trends so that I can have the highest resale value possible. So it feels like the trends are either spectrum, either really dark or really light. So I think this piece would look really good light. I was thinking tan wash. I came across a custom stain that someone did for white oak. And so I went to Sherwin-Williams and I gave them the screenshot of it, and I tried that, and it's beautiful. Now, I do feel there's a few areas that need a little help. Let me show you. I don't know if the issue was my sanding, if I didn't get even enough, or if it's just it's kind of a crazy wood grain.
So I tried to sand the areas that had some variation, and then I applied a sealer. Well, you can see that the sealer just seeped right through to those areas that I had sanded, and now it looks even worse. So it just didn't have enough stain on it in those areas, and so now it's even more patchy than it was before. So now I got to fix it. My initial thought is, well, let me just apply a second coat of stain just to those areas that I sanded, and we'll see if that works.
I ended up doing 3 coats on all 9 of the drawers yesterday because I tried to do the bottom 6 and then it made the other 3 not look good. So I just did the 3rd coat on the whole thing. And honestly, I think it helped some, but to me it still pulls too yellow. So here I am on a Friday, and so I'm trying to decide, do I just let it go or do I try one more thing? So I'm gonna try one more thing. I'm gonna tone it. I'm gonna tone it with a stain, an oil-based stain. I have Salem by General Finishes. It's a warmer color. I just gotta cut some of that yellow. So I'm gonna try that and see what I think.
So to apply the toner, I'm just simply going to wipe it on and I wipe it off. You can see it is definitely warming it up. It's really cutting a lot of that yellow undertone.
It's Monday. Let's see how everything turned out over the weekend. Not so good. So the viral stain that I tried last week didn't work for this piece. I really think that there was too much yellow in the piece. I think because there's so much yellow in the stain, it would have been better to pair it with a wood that has a purple undertone, because it would have canceled out because they're opposite on the color wheel. So I applied like three coats of the stain on the drawers. Tried to warm them up with another stain by General Finishes called Salem. Didn't work. The variations on the front drawers are crazy. So I'm gonna go to plan B and I'm gonna go ahead and do the tan wash that I probably should have just done last week. But I usually use Fusion Mineral Paints Algonquin, but my closest retailer is like close to 30 minutes away from my house. So I don't want to drive over there and grab it, and I just need to get it done. So I went to my local Lowe's and I'm trying to color match the Algonquin to something that I can get quickly. I found a color that I think will work really good. So we're gonna try it this morning and see how it goes. You know, I was disappointed that the viral stain didn't work for my piece, but you know what? Sometimes you just have to try things. I'm gonna keep it because I might run into another wood species that is a better fit for that particular tone. Maybe something like a walnut or something. It'd be interesting to try on that. But you know what? That is part of it. You try things. Sometimes things work great and sometimes they just don't. And so it's okay to pivot and try something different. So on to the tan wash.
For the paint wash, I'm going to use 1 part paint to 3 parts water. And then I mix it up really well. I'm just using a paintbrush to apply it. I'm going to go with the grain, wipe it on, and then I'm going to use a lint-free rag, and I'm just going to wipe off the excess. So here's the before and here's the after. It's definitely toning it down. But unfortunately, some of those are just still too different. You see how those 3 drawers, they just don't match. And so I'm taking drastic measures and I stripped the whole thing down, just the drawers, and I'm sanding them back down to raw, and I'm going to do them again. This time I'm going to do a paint wash a little bit differently. I did a live on the paint washing, and Angela, one of my YouTube commenters, she mentioned that she does her paint wash where she doesn't wipe it back. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to do 1 part paint to 8 parts water, and then I'm not going to wipe it back. I'm just going to let it dry and let the water evaporate. I'm going to use a paintbrush. This is a very wide brush by Stahlmeister. It applied the paint wash really well. Now, I had some pooling, and I asked her, do you ever have any pooling? She said she didn't. I had pooling of the paint on mine, so I don't know what I was doing wrong, but I had some pooling. So what I had to do is I applied it. I had to use a microfiber rag to wipe off the excess paint, and then I came back with my brush and wiped it again, just to kind of get all of that extra paint off. So you see here, I'm just going to kind of wipe it on a microfiber cloth, and then I'll come back with a dry brush and I'm going to wipe it through. You see I'm taking off a little. I've got some pooling right there. Maybe it's because that's where the recessed holes were, but I did have pooling. After that dried, I was ready to seal it. This General Finishes High Performance Top Coat in Dead Flat. It has just the smallest amount of sheen, but it provides a very durable surface. I ended up doing 3 coats with a good 2 hours in between each coat. I'm using my Erlex 5700. This is by Wagner. All metal gun. I love it. Highly recommend it. For the hardware, after it had soaked in the vinegar, I used Barkeeper's Friend and some fine steel wool. I'm going to get all of those polished up. Aren't they beautiful? And then I like to seal them with lacquer for brass. That's going to slow down the tarnishing process. And then I'm ready to reapply all of that hardware. Well, let's look back at the before. Man, I'm sliding into home on this one. This one gave me a lot of problems. Obviously, very disappointed that I ended up not having a maker's mark. So if you go and do flips, make sure you check for a maker's mark or negotiate maybe a better price if there is no maker's mark. Obviously, I had some damage on the top, and look at the crazy grain on the drawer fronts. No wonder I had problems trying to get it to blend in. But after all that work, here is the finished product. I love it. I have to say, I know I tried so many things, but it's gorgeous. I love the tone. So for the case ended up being 2 coats of the white oak stain, and then I toned it, and then I paint washed it. Left it at that. Now the drawers are only the paint wash, so they are a slightly different tone because I don't have that tone of the Salem, but I think it really works. I think it's a beautiful tone together, and the paint wash definitely toned down those crazy wood grain patterns. I was able to get all of that hardware polished off. I love campaign furniture. I don't know if it's all the little brass accents or what, but I just love it. And it's like little jewelry. And can you believe that sheen on there? That dead flat is so beautiful. I don't like really shiny furniture. I really like a matte finish. This finish is a little pricey, but I think it's completely worth it. But that top, I know I had a lot of problems, but it really turned out good. You can see my repairs there at the end. They turned out really good too. So I love it. I really love it. I know it gave me a lot of problems, but I really love it overall. What do you think I should ask for it? Now I have no maker's mark. All I can say is it's a campaign. I can say it's all wood. What do you think I should ask for it? Tell me in the comments. And thanks so much for watching.